All right, friends, welcome back to another episode of the Strong Life Podcast. This is episode 250, and we are on the line with Jon Torine. And I came across Jon's name through my buddy, Matt Wenning. And Matt Wenning had told me about doing an internship in the NFL. And he was mentioned, Jon, you were the strength coach for the Indianapolis Colts. I believe you started in the late 90s, which I always explain to the younger coaches out there that in the late 90s, strength and conditioning was it was almost not a word known to the public. People were still not saying I'm a strength coach. They were more so saying I'm a personal trainer. And so really interesting to get background and history from guys who were doing this in the 90s when really the internet was in its infancy. I don't even know if bigger websites like Elite FTS had been launched yet. So, did Westside Barbell have a website? Who knows? It's interesting. It's going to be interesting to hear your story, Jon, you did about 20 years in the NFL, right? And now you're in the private sector. So Jon, first, thank you for your time and welcome to the Strong Life Podcast.
Thank you, man. I didn't realize you had 250 episodes. That's with the billion podcasts out there. That's pretty damn good, man.
No quitting, brother. No quitting. That's maybe a downfall of mine, is the no quitting.
Sometimes you gotta know when to hold them, when to fold them.
That's right. So yeah, this the first podcast interview I did was with Martin Rooney, and I didn't even have a podcast name yet, and I didn't even have the link for back then it was called iTunes. Now it's Apple Podcasts. Then I did an interview with Eric Cressy, so it's been a while. And I started them off. My whole thing, Jon, is like I don't wait for perfect, and that's how kind of my gym started. Was I didn't wait to have a rented facility. I started out of my parents' garage and backyard. So
wow.
Let's get into, I came across your name, like I said, from my buddy Matt Wenning. You were in the NFL in the late 90s, but let's go to the origin story. Where were you in the late 80s, early 90s? How did it all start, my man?
So, no, I appreciate it, but I want to pull that string on what you just said about not waiting for perfect, because that's a really amazing trait to have.
Yeah.
We used to think that perfectionism was this thing. It's actually quite unhealthy. And I commend you actually, because it speaks to your character about your own self-awareness and going, hey, let's roll it and we'll see what happens. We're not going to let perfect get in the way of progress. We're not going to let good be the enemy of great. And unless you're like you, that most of us procrastinate and we think we don't even know, we're lazy, we're this, we're that. It's that we're afraid of what it would look like to some external thing that it's just a narrative in our head anyway.
Yeah.
And so I could tell you, I struggle with that, man. And I really can't commend you enough on that line. I think anybody that's listening, I think to the kids you coach at Middletown South and at your gyms, I think, man, the more you can talk about that, I think it's a great, amazing trait to have. And it speaks to what you've been able to do. And it speaks to, not to denigrate anybody, but those of us that struggle to get out of the gate a little bit, take a look at that, what you're talking about, man. That's a really spot on way to be.
Nobody's ever really dug into that like you have. So I hope people listening and watching will say, you know what? This list of things that I want to do, like stop waiting for perfect. And maybe, Jon, as you unfold some of your origin story, maybe you also talk about like the early weight rooms you trained in and coached others in, because now, 2020, almost 2021, we see multi-million dollar weight rooms. But they are not where all the best athletes come from. So I hope you your memory, you start remembering what some of these original weight rooms look like that you were in.
We'll dive into that. Yes. I don't know, to that point, I don't know if you've had, and I'll get back to the original thing you said, sure. But I just wanted to pull that out. That's so damn important. what you just said, and gets in the way of so many of us, me included. Some of the best people. I don't know if you have an opportunity to speak to any minor league strength coaches in baseball in the minor leagues.
No.
You talk about guys that know how to get it done, right? They're living on buses, driving in the middle of towns we don't even know exist in this country, getting a team of guys literally making less than the poverty line, eating McDonald's on a per diem that is embarrassing.
It's like a couple dollars a day or
A
something.
couple dollars, and it's
heck?
nothing. Often not from this country either.
Yeah.
And they figure out, with all these obstacles and constraints, how to get it done. And those guys, like, you want to hire somebody and look to people that are resourceful and know how to get things done, given no resources. It's just the way it is. It's not a knock on minor league ball. It's just,
right.
Here's what we got, right? And so you look at that, and it used to be many of the high school guys were that way. And I would always look to the high school guys and the minor league guys with the creativity and resourcefulness to get it done. With all due respect, anybody can get it done at a top 5 college, like, as far as your room is concerned.
Yeah.
Like, that's not a constraint.
Yeah.
There might be other ones. That's not one. So yeah, it's really interesting. Those are some interesting, cool people to dial into. But you got a room of 50 chrome racks where 3 GA's job is just to polish those things all day.
Yeah.
This is a little different, right?
It's, Buddy Moore said, I can't remember if he said it when he was at Pitt or with the Browns, but he said, Zach, hardest thing I did was walk in and turn on the lights. And so I didn't really quite grasp it. Then when you get to a Division I level, you've been at the pro level for almost 2 decades, you get it. There's different things that you're working with, of course, but there's such the cream of the crop genetically that you're saying, here's how we do this exercise, do this, and then they do it, and you're like, whoa, all right. You realize, like, they just take to everything so quickly and easily.
That athletic aptitude. I worked, this will kind of springboard back a bit, but my first job with the Buffalo Bills was in the mid 90s.
Okay.
And Marv Levy was the head coach at the time. And our running backs coach at the time was a guy named Elijah Pitts, who has since passed. And Eli played for Vince Lombardi and the Packers, scored the first rushing touchdown in the Super Bowl. And an amazing, amazing man. And one of his lines that he used to say, he'd say, look, our job is don't screw them up. Let's just don't screw them up. That's the first job. After that, we'll go from there. But let's just don't screw them up.
Right. Well, so you started at Buffalo.
So I was in Buffalo in the mid 90s.
Was that your first coaching job, Jon?
It was that way. Yeah, it was like ridiculous, man. So, you talk about, anybody that thinks they've done anything on this planet by themselves is a little bit probably misguided,
Sure.
And I've had some of the most amazing experiences and mentors and people that have helped me on this journey that I've been on. That, I mean, it's just, when I sit back and think about it, sometimes it's incredible. And it's made me pause and try to do the same thing with guys that I can. When I was 16 years old, and in high school, and you talk about, we didn't know what a strength coach was in the 90s. I'm telling you, when I was in high school, and it's a tough day when you wake up probably in 9th grade and you're a Jersey kid and you go, okay, probably not going to play for the New York Giants. I don't think this is going to happen. And that's a tough day. When that reality sets in, you're like, okay, probably won't happen. I got to go throw out all of my elementary school papers that I wrote that I'm going to play for the Giants, whatever. And so, when your gene pool's a cesspool like mine, you're like, all right, what are we going to do here, man? Right. So I got very, very interested in, how am I going to take this mess that I have and do something with it athletically for as long as, because what I did want to do in the worst way was play college football. Now, I wasn't going to Alabama. I wasn't going to Ohio State. I wouldn't, with all due respect, wasn't going to Rutgers. None of it, right? I was a Division III guy. I wound up going to a Division II school at the time, Springfield College.
Oh yeah.
Got my butt whipped. I think I left 3 of my joints on a field somewhere, and somewhere in another place. But anyway, so I got really, really intrigued by training, and so I dove into this whole idea of exercise physiology, and I started, okay, how am I getting better? I was, you read Muscle and Fitness at the time, right?
Yes.
The old magazine, and
Yeah.
Muscular Development, all this nonsense.
And Flex, that's all we had
You got
in the
it,
early
Flex,
90s.
That's exactly right. We're all reading the same nonsense. And I'm like, all right, this is good, but where's the stuff to like get faster and all that, And so just kept diving in. Didn't know like a strength coach was a thing. Like, how do you even do that? What is that?
Right.
I didn't know it was a thing. I started looking at it. And I was actually wound up, I don't want to say teaching, but enlightening some of the guidance counselors at my high school. Like, there's got to be a way I could go coach this thing. I don't even know what it's called or what it is. But now let's, with all due respect, let's back up and, the physical culture has gone. I mean, I spent some time studying the history of physical culture, and it's fascinating. We all think kettlebells and Indian clubs are this new thing that happened. They're older than freaking dumbbells and older than everything, right? They're just, in vogue. And of course we're misusing them, and that's a whole nother thing. But, so when you look back, and you can go back to how teams were being conditioned back to the Alvin Roys and different things, if you study the history, and which I like to do, not because I like history or I'm a historian, but I'm not arrogant enough to think that we all just got here and everything just happened.
Right.
And so I love peeling back the mentors of the mentors, you look at, people love Tony Robbins, right? Well, I was like, well, who's Tony Robbins? Well, Jim Rohn. We'll go back and look what Jim Rohn is, Tony Robbins' mentor. What's he all about?
Yeah.
It's a cool way to kind of open up things,
100%.
I haven't had an original thought my whole life. I haven't had to. Been around some unbelievable people, right? So we started looking at that when I was 16, and living in North Jersey. Spent a lot of my time down in Bradley Beach in Monmouth County. But I picked up the phone. Johnny Parker was the strength coach of the Giants at the time, and one of the classiest human beings to walk this planet. And I pick up the phone, and I lived about 15, 20 minutes away from where the Giants were in training camp at the time. And he answered the phone, and I had a list of questions I wanted to ask him, like, how did you get there? What did you do? What should I study? I had all this list of questions. I didn't even think he was going to answer the phone. I about dropped it when he picked the phone up. I'm 16, right?
I remember those feelings.
Yeah, man. So he answers the phone. He says, hello. I said, introduce myself. I said, do you mind if I ask you something? I know you're busy. Absolutely. And my other goal was I wanted to go there and like pick up towels, not because I wanted to be around LT and Harry Carson and Carl Banks and Phil Simms, but because I really now you're 16, of course that's cool, but I wanted to understand this thing.
Yes.
And I wasn't allowed to do that because Bill Parcells, who was the head coach at the time, didn't allow anybody in the place. And Johnny, another backstory to that, but the answer was nobody can come in like that. He ran it tight for good reasons. Johnny spent 45 minutes on the phone in the middle of training camp, not because he didn't have anything else to do, with a 16-year-old. I'm 47. I'm talking about it still. I can't remember what I had for breakfast.
Yeah, he can't fake that, the kind of genuine person he is.
Right on. And so I was like, damn. And so Johnny, and it's funny because having then been across the field from him many, many, many times over the years with our teams competing against each other, I would always go over to him and remind him about that. And he got tired of, because he's super humble, and got tired of me telling him, which is interesting, because so I wound up going to Springfield College and all that, and I had a baseball coach in a nutrition course named Coach Royce at Springfield. And I was a sophomore. Coach Royce took a liking to me, and wound up introducing me. He pulled me aside one day after class, and he said to me, what is it that you want to do? And I said, well, I really want to be a strength coach. That's really what I want to do. Otherwise, I really don't know. I'll be renting jet skis in the Bahamas or something. I have no idea. But that's what I want to do. I don't know where, I don't know how, I don't know what, So he walks me back to his office, picks up the phone, and he dials up Rusty Jones. Rusty Jones was the strength coach of the Buffalo Bills at the time. Rusty had been in Buffalo since '85.
Wow.
This is now 1992-ish, this early 90s. Buffalo's in the Super Bowl at the time. All that. Coach Roy says to Rusty, I'm sitting right on his couch. He goes, I got a kid here I think you ought to talk to. I was blown away. Now I'm shaking again, right? Puts me on the phone with Rusty. I talked to him as a sophomore. Rusty tells me to stay in touch with him. And I did. The one other thing I did, Zach, you'll appreciate this. So I talked to Rusty for a few minutes. He said, look, I take interns. He's like, how old are you? I said, I'm a sophomore. He goes, oh man. He goes, I don't even talk to you until you're a senior. I could be fired 3 times by then. He goes, but just stay in touch with me. Gives the phone back to Coach Royce. You could tell they were real tight. How's the family kind of stuff. I could overhear them.
Yep.
And so we hang up. Coach Royce goes, what do you think of that? I go, I don't even know. I come speech. I don't even know what to say.
Yep.
I don't even know what to say. Why'd you do like? He goes, look, I run across kids every now. I've been here a long time. He goes, when I run across a kid who knows what he wants to do, I like to help it. And he was this tough old farmer from Massachusetts. Everybody was scared of that though. Super guy, though, right? Unbelievable. Yeah. So there's a conditioning manual on the shelf in the bookcase on the side. He goes, John, reach in there, pull out that. It was a 1987. I still have it. I was cleaning my basement out the other day. 1987 Buffalo Bills conditioning manual, old spiral manual.
Yes.
Right? He goes, I want you to take this, do what Rusty says, and I want you to read this, learn it, and you give it back to me. You've only got a few days with it. I don't want that thing out of my office long. No problem, Coach. Thanks a lot. I go that day. I got nickels in a bag, like a huge bag.
Yeah.
I go to the Cumberland Farms.
Yes. Photocopy time.
You got it, brother. About an hour and a half.
Yeah.
One side, then the other, like 100-something pages with the old
right.
Right.
Yeah.
And Doritos are everywhere, whatever the hell was going on. I copied that thing. Next day or two, I bring it back to Coach. I say, here you go, Coach. He says, you all said, I said, I'm good. I read that thing probably every night. I had that thing memorized, man.
Yeah.
Right now, this. There's a difference in memorizing and learning.
Oh, yeah.
So I had it all memorized. I don't know what the hell it was, but I had it down. Right. And then I said, okay, I'm going to learn what it is, but now I got it memorized. So stayed in touch with Rusty, wound up going up there as an intern volunteer, whatever it was. And timing was unbelievable. And I was getting ready to leave, and I was calling.
When were you up there, John? What time of year was it? Springtime?
Yeah, man. So this is the off season in '95. So February, I go up to Buffalo in a snowstorm. I actually got held up by a day. February of 1995.
It's brutal weather up there. Brutal.
Oh my God, it's unbelievable. And Buffalo is a great place, but the weather is tough. It's tough.
Yes.
It's not meant for wimps like me.
So you were there in '95 as an intern?
Yep.
There may have been I hate to cut you off, but like when we start mentioning names, as you know how it goes, there was a wrestler / football player from Jersey who
No, you're gonna say.
Oh, you do? Covington?
Oh, Damien. Yeah, NC State. Yep.
Okay, so he went to, I didn't know where he went to college, but I know he got to Buffalo for a year and he got murdered.
He did.
Right?
Yeah, he did.
And his brother did what he did. Damien Covington knocked off the all-time winningest wrestler in New Jersey.
He was one of the toughest kids you ever met. He was actually a great kid. I don't know what happened, and
Right.
we had a good relationship. But typically, as a side note, you love the wrestlers that play ball are amazing, man. They're amazing.
He's from a town called Overbrook. I don't even know where that is.
I don't either. I don't either.
It's like a little
Yeah.
town. Then the next year, his younger brother won the states, same fashion, beating a kid who was going for his third state title. His brother Kip headlocks him with 10 seconds to go and wins the match, like 5-4 or something. But that family, I could just imagine what kind of football games were happening in the backyard, when I think about that stuff.
No kidding. A lot of broken coffee tables.
Exactly. All right. So you go up in February. February is snowstorm time. I mean, blizzard.
I got stuck. I was in a panic. I got stuck on a New York State Thruway driving up, what my first experience with a whiteout was.
Would you have a car? No SUVs back then.
I had an 84 Honda Accord, 130,000 miles. That's how I rolled.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it was, and so I couldn't get there, and I'm trying, and I call Rusty. I'm like, look, trying to get there. I'm going to be a little late. He's like, what are you doing? Why are you driving? I'm like, we start tomorrow, whatever the hell it was. He goes, go pull over in a hotel. Are you kidding me? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
No, man, it's, so I went, I couldn't move. We were stuck. So that was my introduction to the whiteouts. Now I had been up there one time before for the quickest interview of your life, because Rusty forgot I was coming. We still joke to this day. Rusty had a knee surgery. I was waiting for him in the locker room to interview. And he walks in to go get some ice. It was like a off weekend or something. And he's like, who are you? I said, I'm Jon Torine. I'm supposed to interview. I'm looking for, he goes, oh my God, I totally forgot. And he says, I just came in to get some ice. Man, are you lucky? So he goes, so we had talked a lot over those couple of years, but he goes, look, I told you a couple of years ago, Coach Royce likes you. I like you. He goes, he looks me up and down. He goes, okay, see you in a few months.
That's it.
So we laughed. He said, he never came in for ice. I'm lifeguarding I'm still lifeguarding in Bradley Beach.
Holy crap. So you went in for an interview. I thought you were going to be staying up there. So it's February. And then
I'm sorry, I screwed you up. That was previous. Okay. It was just funny.
Oh, okay.
And then when I came back to start was the snowstorm.
Okay. Yeah.
I had gone up. That was like Memorial Weekend, whatever the heck it was.
Yep.
So I go up there and I'm there, and then I'm getting ready to. I couldn't afford to live there anymore. I was living on credit cards. I was actually staying with Rusty.
Yeah, I was going to ask you where did you stay?
Yeah, he put me up. Now you talk about one of the greatest human beings on the planet, selfless, brilliant. I owe Rusty my life. Just there's not. He's been like a second father. He's been like an uncle. He's been like everything to me, a mentor to say the least. And I still, after 20 plus years, haven't found the words to articulate about this man.
Yeah.
And he gets tired of hearing me talk about him like that, because he's too humble. But like I said, I'm so grateful for these folks that I was just, I don't know.
Well, not everybody gets a good experience, Jon. I mean, if we also turn it around, I mean, your work ethic is pretty evident. You're driving up during a blizzard. Some of these kind of head coaches today tell me that they'll have an intern working for him, and the kid will just be like, I got to go early today. Okay, why? It's like, it's nice out. I got to get out of here. Like, that's not a reason why we're leaving, And so guys like you with that work ethic, that is exactly what I would have been doing. I would have driven through that snowstorm in my old Mazda 626.
Yeah.
And because I see that myself and you, like photocopying stuff, rereading things every night, and just being the hardest worker in the room. What did like a typical day look like for you as an intern when you went up there?
So what was cool was, because I was living with Rusty, and he loves to talk about this even now, I had my own tutor every night. Right.
Crazy.
So we're eating dinner, we're sitting at the and we're still talking. So I had him 24/7. Questions, he'd give me projects. I'm up in a bedroom working on things, coming out. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? It was ridiculous. So, your typical day is no different than a strength coach. I got there, damn early, made sure everything was ready to go, and understood at that time. And what was cool in Buffalo at the time, Rusty was the youngest coach on the staff at that time, and he was in his 40s. So I'm around all this wisdom, right? There's all this great gray hair, right? Marv Levy, Tom Bresnahan was a line coach. I mean, Charlie Joyner was the receivers coach, Hall of Fame player, and and Bruce DeHaven, special teams coach. And if you sit back and you just listen to this wisdom, right? It's like that's a PhD every day.
Yeah, you're time lapsing. You're basically you're learning from these people who have the decades of experience, and you're skipping the 20 years of things that you should. You're just you're. I think a friend of mine, Ed O'Keefe, wrote a book. I think it was called like Time Lapsing. It's like you just go to the expert to learn and like become a PhD right away. You're jumping the ladder of success.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. And you look at you got Jim Kelly, Bruce Smith, Thurman Thomas, Andre Reed. These are names many have heard of that are in the Hall of Fame. And the guys you haven't. And I'm like, I'm freaking 22 years old. What the hell am I going to tell? But the respect they had for Rusty,
right,
and his abilities, his knowledge, his number one, his caring.
Yeah,
he cared more than anybody on the planet.
How did he show that he cared? Because I get that feeling also when I would speak to Coach Johnny Parker, like he just loved them. And, you're 22, you're coming from a Division II school. They might be NFL guys looking at you strange, but here's a guy how did he demonstrate the caring? Because that's like I think some coaches are still missing that. They're so worried about super training, so I'd like to hear that.
I love that you pulled that out, because that's the deal, man, right? Like, especially now, we can all go learn, whether it's X's and O's of a sport or whatever freaking periodization or whatever it is you want to learn. Now the information is all there. You just gotta, the challenge I think the young guys have is filtering out what you need. It's a whole different mindset.
Yeah.
Way back then, if you learned what a single leg deadlift was when I first started, because a Buddy Morris came in and showed you or something like that, you'd be like, you're not gonna believe what I just learned. You'd be talking about that with your buddies. Now it's like it's a totally different way to learn. Not good or bad, just you got to adjust it.
Yeah.
The way what happens is this. And I don't know if Rusty never said these words necessarily, but you either show up to improve or you show up to prove, right? So he shows up every day, and now his knowledge, his skills, his intellect, his recall, his understanding of everything happens to be second to none, and so is his humility. But here's the deal with the caring thing. And here's what I learned real simply. And this is easy to say, but okay, how do you once, and I don't care if it's pro ball players or 5-year-olds or your dog. And once you have trust, true trust, then if you know something about one thing, you must know something about a lot of stuff. If you're there to truly serve them, not serve them so that you can post.
Yeah. Well,
not do this so that we can go on, and I'm not an old curmudgeon bagging on social media. That's not my point. But what is your agenda really, truly? And only you can answer that when you're staring up the ceiling at night in your own bed. But if you're truly showing up as a servant, as a leader, and they trust you, now how do you build trust?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you build trust? Trust is not only just your trust really is your promise to keep a promise, your commitment to the commitment, right? Your accountability. By the way, we're just like, if you fancy yourself and your identity is around you being a strength coach, wonderful. But let's all pull back. And I don't, it gave me my life. And I don't mean this in a bit like, let's get around the perspective that we're just strength coaches. Let's don't, right? And that doesn't mean the impact we have is made, but we're there for them. 80,000 people aren't sitting in the stands pre-COVID to see you and your Zubas and Oakleys. That's not what they came for. They came to see the guys on the field. There's no league without players. It doesn't exist.
Yep.
Can't happen. When you're truly there and care about them, truly, not so, and their families and their careers, and how you can make them one dial better, then they begin to trust you. If you're a person of your word and you keep your commitments and your commitment to them, then you can really understand that, to your point initially when we first started talking, it's okay not to be perfect. And you're going to screw up and make mistakes and own them, because you're going to ask them to own them. And you're going to hold them accountable. They ought to hold you accountable.
Yeah.
Peyton Manning held everybody in the building accountable. From the guy dropping off the packages, to the strength coach, to the head coach, to the owner. And then you get a culture of accountability and trust. That's it. So there's something innate that we can all feel when we get connected with people. And you have a connection with them, and they like, we can feel this purity, this authenticity, in another word that's thrown around all the time. But it's like, when your word is your law, and you're not afraid to show up, right? Like, I don't know if you've read or seen that much of Brene Brown.
I heard.
Daring Brene Brown, unbelievable researcher out of Texas, but TED Talks and book Daring Greatly, and
Okay.
I can't think of perfectionism, but Gift of Perfection is other things. She talks about this word called vulnerability, and we're all throwing it around it. So vulnerability is how you show up, and involves, it's the greatest courage going, because to be vulnerable involves risk, uncertainty, and emotional exposure. And when she interviews military people, they will tell you that there's no mission they go on that doesn't involve risk, uncertainty, or emotional exposure, which is vulnerability, which is putting yourself out there, like you talked about before. That's being vulnerable.
Yep.
And that's where courage is and lives. And it takes the bravery to show up like that. Those of us that are scared to not do what you did and go, I got to look perfect, we don't have bravery and courage.
I think
Right?
it also coming, like, just the fact that there's no such thing as perfect. It just doesn't exist. The way I heard of it was a business coach, Dan Sullivan. He runs a program called Strategic Coach.
Yeah.
He calls it the gap. He says, so like, perfection is like the sunset. He's like, you look like you could get to it, but you'll never get to it. It's you could see it. He's like, but it actually doesn't exist. He's like, so if the gap is what is actually you can, achieve, and then and versus that area leading to perfection. He's like, it doesn't exist. So if you're always chasing perfection, you're always disappointed. You're always upset because you actually will never achieve it. You're chasing something that can't be obtained or touched. And also, I also think there's a lot of beauty in the imperfections. So there's a lot of beauty in like a crappy looking weight room. There's just, you just feel like it's a place that's been worked, sometimes when it's too perfect. In fact, I remember when I was at Rutgers, one of the coaches there, he had been at Michigan, and he's like, we once lost a big time recruit. Kid, I think, was coming from Pennsylvania, like the farms. and he didn't commit, and he thought it was a great, they hit it off, and the kid was like, he's like, this place looks like it's all staged. It looks like there's really no work going on here. Like, it's too perfect. He's like, I can't be there. And he was like, man. But now we, of course, hear like that's what pulls recruits in. They see these beautiful, and look, we're both dads, that looks good too. Hey, my kid's gonna be well taken care of. Look at this beautiful facility. So what did the facility look like, Jon, for you when you got to the Bills as an intern, or even like when you started coaching there? Who even made equipment back then? I know Hammer Strength and
Hammer, and we had Nautilus machines, and we had our racks and benches were just unbelievable. Damn, these great big steel, beautiful in your definition. I can't think of the damn company now.
Not Sornex, was it?
I don't think it wasn't Sornex at the time.
Back then,
it looked a little bit like Sornex racks, and we were in the bowels of the stadium.
Oh wow!
And old Q65 treadmills, Q65s, the Stairmasters, all that kind of stuff. But look, it's at the end of the day, with everything that's going on. I don't know if you watched The Prophet, Marcus Lemonis, The Prophet.
No, is that a show or a movie?
It's a show. It's a show. It's got Marcus Lemonis. It's a show. He actually was a CEO of Camping World. Fascinating. I think it's on CNBC or whatever it is.
Okay.
And he buys struggling small companies and turns them around.
Oh, I got to dig into that.
It's amazing. It's like, that's how I've learned about business, from Marcus Lemonis and Shark Tank. I don't know if that's good. So what he talks about, he goes, I go into every business and it's real simple. I look at three things. I look at people, process, product. And what he says is this. And so he makes a deal. I'll give you whatever, $250,000 for 50% of your business, however they do it. And he's not a consultant. Like, he goes in and then he works it, right? And it's a TV show. I'm sure there's a lot of,
right.
There's 95% we don't have any idea. But so he goes, look, people, process, product. I can fix process. That's just systems. We'll fix any system. We can make systems better if that's a problem. If your product sucks, we can either make it better, or your product just sucks. I'm not interested.
Right.
But if your product just needs some help, we can fix a product. People, that's where I got to understand. That's what I need to understand. Can I work with you? Can we work together? Can I help you if things are awry? This is still about people, and it always will be. The whole thing. I don't care what you have, don't have, whatever it is. It's still a people thing. And so I'm talking about Johnny Parker 30 some years later, because how do you know people care about it? The only thing we have on this planet that we spend and can't get back is time.
Yes.
And so we all value money more, but money comes and goes. Until you look at time a little bit differently and more uniquely, because who the hell knows how long we're going to be on this rock. And so when somebody gives up their time for you and with you to help you, like legitimately, not how it's going to help me, so I'll talk, like, but for real, not as a transaction, not as manipulation, but a real relationship. And great if we can help each other, of course. When you give up your time for me, I don't care if it's your kids know. Your players, your athletes, the guy that cleans the weight room, the gal that helps you do whatever, like, that's how you know you start trusting. They gave up their time. You might not even articulate that in your head, but it's like they actually spent time with me talking about my favorite thing to talk about, which is me. Right? Like, especially a Pro Bowl player, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing more favorite thing to talk about than themselves. Wonderful. That's what we're here for. We're here for you. Right? And so we are, right? And so that's where so much of that comes from. So it's not about the room, man. The room, like, because you can get it done. I could pull a minor, like I said, I can pull a minor league baseball coach in the middle of Nebraska and do a lot better job than I could. You know.
Yeah.
So
It's hard to. I've gotten into this conversation before, John, with caring, and it actually, ironically, you're mentioning Coach Johnny Parker, and that was what hit home to me through his our podcast. Was he said that good coaches coach weights, and great coaches coach people, and I've always felt like I can't teach you to care. I can't teach you to care. And then you were talking about all the studying you did. And so when I want to study stuff, it's not because it gives me a new certification or letters. I'm like, I got to get better for these kids. That's
why you're
all
a coach.
that is running through my mind is like what I did today. I got to come back better tomorrow. I got to break my old self and rebuild better for them. And a guy, man, I don't know who asked me that. Oh, I was interviewed a couple of weeks ago by a younger up and coming coach, great kid. He goes, how do you have all this energy? You're a dad, you got 2 gyms, you're the online business, you're at the high school. And I said, man, I care so much. Like it just fuels me. Care about these kids. And I was not always like that, by the way. I always cared, but I initially cared more about winning points
Well,
on
of
the
course.
board.
But and I love what you said before. It's why you're a coach, right? So guys that coach and honor that word. I think that word, like sensei, is to be honored, like teacher. And so, not because we do it, but that word is quite serious. And if you honor that word, the reason you are learning is exactly what you just said. Like if you're just learning to increase knowledge, wonderful, but I don't know where show me what that's doing other than you might like going to cocktail parties. I'm not sure. I don't know how many Krebs cycle conversations are breaking out at martini parties, but
Yeah.
you're learning this. Okay. And I know what you're thinking, man. Okay. How can I then take this to my kids tomorrow? And
Yes.
whether it's your kids that are your athletes, I'm sure you relate to every student in the building and every kid that comes, and your own children, because coaching and parenting ain't that different. I got 2 boys. And so when we're in our 20s, we all want to show up and I'm here to solve everything. And I've made those mistakes.
Yeah.
Now, thank God I got my ass kicked without even having to bring it up, by all those old coaches in Buffalo. Say, hey, kid, come here. Let me tell you how this thing rolls, right?
What are some things they would say to you?
They loved, because I was a good young guy that hustled.
Yeah.
Because I was with Rusty and he had the respect of the entire building. And Rusty will talk about you to everybody if he's fond of you. And so almost, you almost can't even live up to it. And so I got, around a building, John does a good job here. Players respect him. He's busting his ass. So when they see, you get a young guy, you go, okay, he's a good one here. Let's break his chops, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard it. Bruce DeHaven, God rest his soul, he used to say to me, there's one time I had left Buffalo and I was in Indianapolis. I was the youngest strength coach in the NFL ever hired when I went to Indy, which is a whole nother.
How old were you when you got to Indianapolis?
I was 90. I was 25.
Holy crap.
Yeah, I was a head strength coach at 25. Had no business being there.
Why do you say you had no business?
By Bill Polian.
Why do you say no business being there?
There was 10 million more people qualified to do that job. I'll tell you this in a minute. So I'm there, and Bruce had called me on the phone, and I got his voicemail, and I didn't call him back like immediately. And his next day, I don't remember. And he calls me back, and he picks up the phone, and he goes, "Listen, you young punk." Right? He says, God rest his soul. He said, "You just remember who you saw on the way up, because you're going to see him back on the way down. Don't piss him off. He says, when I call you, you call me back. You ain't nothing yet.
Right. There was no cell. So this would have been what year? I don't
That's
even know if you
98.
did you have a
Yeah,
cell phone? I don't
no, I'm on my office phone. I need a
Right.
cell phone.
Yeah.
But so stuff like that, they would tell you. And so, as Edrin James used to say, this league will humble you. and if and it will. And so you get around those guys, and if you'll just listen, and they'll teach you if you want. It's like when a student is ready to teach, you will appear.
That's right. Yeah.
So,
but John, there's not a lot. I tell you what I struggle with is finding, you're talking about at 25, you're at the Colts. I'm always like, man, dude, I'm waiting to find somebody who could kind of work hard. Like I am double their age and doing double their work. Now, granted, yeah, I own the business and, I shouldn't expect anybody to care more, this and that. But sometimes I'm like, man, that's all you're just looking for is hard workers. I'm sure that was an experience those coaches had in the 90s, waiting for somebody to show up who had great work ethic. That's very refreshing.
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky. I grew up, I was working in my dad's restaurants when I was a kid. I was 9 years old, washing dishes and all that. Not a sob story by any means, but I don't know. I just, I saw my grandfather, how he worked. I don't really know what I just understood. Like here's all these people, whether athletes or CEOs or whatever. Like, what's the common denominator? That follow the breadcrumbs, right? Success leaves trails.
Yes.
Well, shit. If the minimum price of admission is work hard, that's on you. And so if you want to do it, go do it. And so your work ethic, is the price of admission. And I hear a lot of people complain. I can't find. I don't. I don't know what all that is or isn't. I know there's plenty of people that whatever that is or whatever we can help inspire them to see, because I can tell you this, I don't work hard at stuff I don't want to be good at. Right?
It's true. Yeah.
I don't care about it.
Yeah.
I got a mechanic, a plumber, my mechanic in town. Yeah. He always says, we have a long standing deal of how we operate together, but I'll call him. I'll say, hey man, can I come in? Whatever, it's making a noise. So he'll say to me, and I've known him 8-9 years, I can't even hammer a freaking nail on a wall. I got none of that, right? No clue. So he'll be like, what do you think's wrong with it? I said, hey man, if I knew that, I wouldn't need you.
That's right.
I don't know. I'm going to drop it off. You're going to do whatever it is you do. I thought you were the expert.
That's right.
And then I'll pick it up when you say it's good.
Yeah.
Right. And he loves it because I'm like, I don't freaking know. You're right. So, and I don't want to know. I don't have any interest in learning what that noise, yeah, whatever, man. So, but when you have one of the best interns I had didn't even want to be a strength coach, learned that he wanted to do something else. And the reason I say he was one of the best is because I'm glad he came through there to learn that he didn't want to do it.
Why did he figure out he didn't want to do it? Was it the hours? What was it?
He actually was more into, he wanted it. And we did nutrition like crazy. Right. And I saw his eyes light up only when we did nutrition. Didn't have much interest in the other stuff.
Right.
We talked one day. I was like, you want to go into straight up RD or nutrition, don't you? He goes, I actually do. I was like, I could have told you that 3 months ago. Yeah. And I was like, go for it. And he's like, really? I thought I had to be, no, go for it. And it was like this big weight off his shoulders. Yeah. And he had the work ethic to do it. I said, you work hard. Just because you don't like the lifting, don't apologize. That's just one segment of what we do anyway.
Yeah.
So not to get on that, but
no, that's all right. The guy, the strength coach for the Eagles, I met him a year ago. He said that was a big reason why, I don't know how long he's been there for, but there was like a panel that Rutgers had that I spoke at, and Evan Marcus was on there, the guy with the Eagles, Josh, and Josh was saying that was a big separating factor, was he had like a dual master's degree in exercise science and nutrition, and they wanted somebody who was gonna, get the nutrition segment and take that serious. What were you talking about with nutrition? You mentioned it was a big part. What were, back then I think that would have been early days EAS, a lot of supplements.
Yeah. So check this out. So
what were
so
you
back
guys
to
talking about?
So Rusty in the late 70s
Wow.
developed a nutrition software. It's called Anjon Systems.
What's it called?
Anjon.
John?
Anjon Systems. It was
Still out or no?
You could probably find it. It was a combination of a scouting system and it had nutrition. He developed it with this other guy so that he could be a better strength coach. I'm talking about the late 70s. Okay. So $4,000 system at the time. Not because it was like, that's what, now, and, just like anything else, you can't get it now probably, but whatever it went, whatever, $100 or something. And so he was doing nutrition in the late 70s, early 80s when nobody was even thinking about it. I mean, they just came off a league where guys are smoking cigarettes at halftime. And
That's
so
right. Damn,
what Rusty understood, because he has such a grasp on physiology, he understood that if I can understand nutrition backwards, what's carbohydrate burn, what's protein, how does that work backwards when we burn and exercise? And it's just a simple physiology. And I could feed them forward into that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, let's back up. What nutrition requirements does this need? It's like saying this. Let's say you didn't know anything about, I don't know, cricket. And they said, you're our next cricket strength coach, Zach. You're like, I don't know anything about cricket. Okay, who cares? One of the first things you may do is go, geez, I got to figure out the energy system requirements of cricket. If I understand the energy system requirements of cricket, I can back up and start to create my plan, my training program.
Reverse engineer it.
Well, same thing with nutrition. Just reverse engineer nutrition back up. Okay, so here's what I need: macronutrient, micronutrient. Okay, great. Now we got that science down. Let's be real world. How the hell are we going to even feed a guy? How do we do this? What are the hydration requirements? How do we backtrack millimoles of electrolytes so we understand that? And then how do you actually apply it? I.e., coach humans. Hey, not just keyboard. You should have a Pedialyte, but how do you literally? How does that happen? And so coach him. Why should a guy drink a Pedialyte? Because you say so. Oh, well, I trust him. He cares. He knows his stuff. And I did it, and I felt fine or good or better or whatever it is. And it's legitimate stuff. And so he did that way. So I learned nutrition. One of the first things Rusty taught me, how do we work nutrition with guys, both one-on-one, feeding team, everything, in order to get body comp where it needs to be. Why did that matter? Not because we wanted to just look good in our pants, but Buffalo at the time, and interestingly enough, Indianapolis ran no-huddle offense. And Buffalo's no-huddle offense was faster than ours in Indy in terms of the play clock. When the next play was run. Buffalo's was more of the K-gun offense. It was more like a 2-minute drill. If that team wasn't fit in a no-huddle offense, they were screwed based on a work-to-rest ratio.
Yeah.
Of how, in the most simplistic terms. So you better have a lean, fit team that can handle that play over play over play over play, not only just from a fatigue standpoint, but an injury standpoint. Reverse engineer. What's the best speed training in the world? Body comp. You can do all the high knees you want. If you're carrying 30 pounds of excess weight, high knees ain't helping you.
That's right. So, John, talk about the training. You guys had a no-huddle offense. What were you doing? A lot of supersets? Well, you said you had the Nautilus and the hammer strength. So hammer strength was built by guys who were trained under Arthur Jones. It was like Nautilus next generation. Was it?
We never did the hit stuff.
Interesting.
What you call the hit stuff, the ones that so that's like lactate training, right? I still
can't believe people did that.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons was if you spin, you always kind of tease out, right? We all want to, but if you look at it, why do teams like it? It's fast. You're never, ever going to get hurt doing it.
Because you're doing super slow. You're on a machine.
It's hard work, but it looks hard. The head coach, you don't need much time, only 30 minutes, only 4, right? And so there's a lot of positives from a logistical standpoint of to do it. But when you truly understand energy systems, you just got to look, and separate from HIIT, is what I'm doing match specific, not specific, matching the energy systems, and sometimes it doesn't look like it, but matching the energy systems of the sport. And if you go back and read old books like A. Strand's Textbook of Work Physiology, right? You want to learn something. Garrett Guimond, who's a strength coach for years and years in the NFL, told me one day, he goes, "Hey kid, you want to learn something new?" I'm like, "Absolutely." He goes, "Go read an old book." That was a good point.
What were some of the old books that you were reading, like strength books?
Yeah, so I mean,
there weren't too many strength and conditioning books in the 90s. It was all bodybuilding.
Yeah. So I mean, Rusty used to get a disc of journals that came once a month, and it was like a floppy disk, had every journal review on it. This is in the mid 90s.
Was it the Soviet Sport Review or no?
No, we went through every journal. It was like, if it's like looking at PubMed now, but it was on a disc or something.
Yeah.
And we'd take one afternoon.
Floppy disk.
We get the disc. We go upstairs.
Yep.
Place would be shut down. We'd spend hours. He goes, "All right, you look at whatever. You look at hamstrings. I'll look at carbohydrate." Boom. Did all that. Just started research studying. What can we do? Not. I had everybody's phone. Until I met Bill Kramer and these scientists. I'll pick up the phone and call anybody who, like I said, just like my mechanic.
What about in the 90s was Powerlifting USA, and Louis was writing for them. Were you reading any of that stuff?
Yeah, some of that. Actually later on adapted and started to understand a lot of that of Louis' stuff and where it could fit and where it wouldn't. I had a great conversation with him one day at the combine, and a real conversation, he and I, and he's like, "Look, I can tell you right now, this, what I do, that, and that, I'd never do with a pro ball player. This, and this, I would." And I was like, "That's really refreshing, because I thought you would tell me everything."
What was he saying he would not
I can't remember. There were certain things, but I was just so impressed. Like, I don't do that. Like, he knew more than I even gave him credit for, translated to the sports world.
Yeah. I jumped around on you a little bit. So what were some of those workouts like when you, to prep Buffalo, no huddle offense?
Right.
What did that look like?
Understand the energy system. When you lift and train, right? Like strength training, if all you had to do was do strength training, just strength training, you can go home by lunch. Like, do you understand overload principle? Great. Here's your PhD. Of course you can get cute. Getting somebody strong, consistent, it's hard work, but it's not hard, right?
Correct. It's not complicated.
It's not complicated. Let's don't make it that way.
People want to make it complicated, but the truth is it's not.
Let's don't do that. Let's spend, hard is going cheeseburger, no. Right? Appropriate carbohydrate, yes. Appropriate fat, yes. So point is this: understand your energy systems. So I love the question around HIIT, because if we understand strength, we understand power. If you go back and look at Mike Stone's work and other things, and Bill Kramer's on force velocity curve, and you just simply understand power, F equals V times force times velocity. I'm screwing it up now, but you either increase load, decrease speed, decrease load, right? And then you're training the force velocity curve.
Yes.
Just playing with F and V, right? And so if you understand where you need to be for power, and we got the technology to do it better than ever now, from the GymAwares and Tendos and all these other things out there, to understand meters per second our velocity.
Back then it was coach's eye. I mean, still today, you can see a guy move and just be like, we take 5 pounds off each side of that bar, and that'll fix everything.
Yeah. And I appreciate that, because we've got this culture of how much, how many, and that's all we're concerned about, as opposed to the other pieces. But when you understand energy systems, okay, so now I understand strength. I know we fast forwarded here. I understand strength, I understand power. These are the weights. Weights is just interval training, right? You can choose to rest short or long, but if you understand the phosphocreatine system a little bit, and if you understand the half-life of creatine phosphate as a fuel substrate between sets, the reason people take creatine, which I don't want to get into now, nor would I don't let my kids take it, but if you understand what it's required to rest, and understand how you dump lactate, and if your goal is strength, here's your rest. If your goal is power, and you start to understand on a very simple level, you'll get people really strong and powerful. Now, what about conditioning? You ran no huddle offense. Okay, good. What's our body comp first and foremost? Understand conditioning now. Running, like you brought up before, on the field or track or ice or mat or pitch, whatever you're doing, understand the energy system that you have to get done in the sport and what that means, and how then are we going to train dumping lactate on the field. Again, we were dumping polar heart rate monitors on DOS software on an external modem in the mid.
I remember DOS software. Holy
yeah,
crap!
DOS. We had heart rates on guys with
Yeah.
things. We dumped them, and you saw the graphs in the mid. They were like, "Oh my God, it's great!" Now, nobody cares about that. But we've got the higher technology, looking at load and mechanical load and all these things now that are better and looking up. But you can go back. My friend Tim Maxey, who coached in baseball for years and years with the Royals and Cleveland Indians. I met him when he was the Buffalo Bisons. Rusty and the strength coach of the Indians were friends at the time. And we sat and had a heart rate discussion from Oral Hershiser's work to what we were doing. And you understand what they're doing in a game, not because you're training heart rate, but because you're looking at the response that the heart rate gives you to the metabolic demand. And if you understand METs, believe it or not, you understand METs, you understand intensity. And however you want to look at it, whether it's by METs, cal per minute, whatever you're looking at, that, and I don't want to make this sound like, but the overriding and overarching principle is, if you can understand and honor energy systems, we didn't create them. We just understand them a little bit. Then you understand the metabolic demand you can create, and simply looking at heart rate or these other load mechanisms is simply looking at the response to it. And so if your ability to dump lactate is better, then your recovery heart rate, which matters way more than your peak heart rate, will be better. Like 12 play drive, what does your heart rate get back to if there's a turnover on the other side and you only got 2 minutes recovery? Like, and by the way, I don't really care what you bench at that time.
Yeah.
And so understanding, and I probably overcomplicated an explanation here, but just simply understanding the energy system is the take-home message. And it's not about who puked today and who sweated a certain way and who's hunched over breathing hard. And by the way, those objectives are fine when you need them, not puking, but understand your objective of what you're trying to get done. And if you work for a team that runs a no huddle offense, where movement and quickness is a speed, we could fit our defense in Indianapolis in a Volkswagen. We're small. And so if you understand what you're trying to do, so strength coaches out there, and I can't implore you enough, don't be in a silo by yourself in the weight room. Like, you got coaches there that are brilliant.
Yeah.
Not all of them. You got athletic trainers and docs and everybody around. Like, and this is what I spent, or had been spending quite a time when I go out to teams and organizations and other things, is bringing these systems together. And when I say systems, it's first people and then the system, from medical and coaching to strength conditioning, everything
That's
together.
still a struggle, John.
I
still talk, I have friends coaching at all different levels, college, NFL, high school, and there's still, look, even at my high school, like, not all coaches believe in what I'm doing.
Yep.
And they don't want to even like try to meet in the middle. It's like, what they did. And sometimes I used to, honestly, like when I was at Lehigh, that was a bit of a drive, but when I was done, I would always go sit in the office of the wrestling coaches and we would just talk. And I did it at Rutgers too. And I loved it. We would talk about what we have going on now. Then other stories would come up. What did they used to do at this school? That, that stuff just, it makes you better. Now I think a lot of schools are putting everything under one roof. The strength and conditioning is in the same building as the sports, as the athletic training, as well as the PT.
Yeah, which is great to get us closer to each other. But the Mideast has a border that's close to each other too, and they fighting all the time. So just because we bring rooms together and cinder block doesn't mean we brought people together.
So what do you think of that?
Leadership business.
Expand on that a little bit. What would bring people together better?
So conversation,
I
right?
mean,
And
look
so
at like Rutgers just brought Greg Schiano back. They're winning and coming close to beating some very tough teams after all this COVID stuff. So he didn't even really get to do his thing.
I know it. You know what I love about a locker room? A locker room is this rectangular, sacred place, right? And if you have a good locker room, it's an awesome thing. And what does that mean? You can have a locker room and you can bring in people from different races, religions, socioeconomic status, every walk of life. And you put them in a room and you go, here's the vision, here's the goals, here's the purpose. His first day, he took his coach to in Indianapolis. After telling the owner in an interview prior to that, that football was the third most important thing in his life, and it wasn't even close. Faith and family and football, and a lot of people say that. Tony actually lives it, and if you're going to work with Tony, you're going to live it. Not necessarily his faith, but you're going to live it in terms of football will not be number one. He actually learned that from Chuck Noll, right, with the Steelers. And he told that, he's like, you're going to pay me a bunch of money, and I'm telling you, football is third in my life. And Mr. Ursay said, great, that's fine. So the coach Dungy stood up in the first team meeting, first day there. Players, coaches, we're all in there. And he goes, look, fellas, here's how we're going to win here. Here's how we're going to win. The first thing we're going to do, and Schwaber's like, okay, here's Coach Dungy. Just, we're going to get all the, must mean defense or what's he going to talk about? Here's how we're going to win here. First of all, we are going to be pillars in this community. We're going to be a bunch of people and a team that this city, this state, and this league is proud of, and proud to be fan that a kid can walk up and tell his mother, I'm an Indianapolis Colts fan, and his mother understands what that is and why that's good. We're going to be pillars of the community. And half of us are looking at each other like, this guy's serious? Like, how the hell you win like that? What's that got to do with anything? So he says, and if we do that first, then we will win and it will feel unbelievable. He goes, we're probably going to win anyway. It just won't feel as good. So I'm going to ask you to be pillars in this community and be a team. I think you understand what I'm saying, that this city would be proud of. The mother and child could walk up to me and be proud of this thing. I think everybody understands it. And so now he hits us with purpose and mission, larger than ourselves, and then get into all of the wonderful things that okay, so here's the goal. Here's Coach Dungy talk about expectations, execution, no excuses, no explanations, and what this means, and all these other wonderful things. But you take this rectangular box and you form a mission and a vision around it, no different than, God rest his soul, Zappos, right? And what Richard Branson does, and Damon John, and all these other wonderful business folks. And you wrap this mission and vision, and then you have a common goal, and then you're doing it for the other person, truly. Nobody wanted to let Coach Dungy down.
Yeah.
They would rather let themselves down than Coach Dungy.
That's when people really...
Yeah, so
you rise up, you perform so high when you don't want to let somebody down.
It's not you, it's you're doing it. So now you get this rectangle. Like, people want to learn how to get along. Go watch a really great locker room, how it functions from every different walk of this country. And you'll see the most beautiful things, and hard conversations, and vulnerability, and ball breaking, and fun, and words that you would say in that locker room. Not, family's off limits, right? But words you would say to guys, and conversations, hard conversations, race, religion, politics, right? That we're seeing now out of LeBron James and other folks publicly.
Yeah, right.
But can you imagine that exists yet, you and your neighbor can't even talk about it?
Yeah.
Right? And you live on the same block.
I know. I've said kind of I always said to the kids, it's like the weight room doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care about the money your parents have in the bank account or the car you drive or the color of your skin. We're all equal here, but you will get what you earn.
Yeah, man.
Effort. That's such like the purity and the beauty of, the weight room and sports. Somebody, I can't remember who said this. I came across it recently. They said the thing about sports is like you could go to a football game or a soccer game and you could see athletes standing out. You could see talent, but you don't always know their work ethic. But if you go into a weight room, you get to see what kind of person that is. What is that person's work ethic? And I wish I could remember who I overheard saying that. But I was like, wow, because some super talented people don't really work that hard. That's just the truth. And that's what helps them actually feel better. It is what it is. But I've always had a thing for like the hardest worker in the room. So like when I'm in the weight room, I could see, I say to the kids, I go, what if I shut off the stereo? Do I hear weights clanging or do we hear you talking? What can we hear? What can we see? So John, it's 1:00. I do want to transition real quick
Yeah.
I don't know too many strength coaches like yourself who've been in the professional ranks and then went private sector. There's some. I mentioned to you earlier, I knew Dwayne Carlisle the early years. He was in South Jersey and Philly. He had like the private sector. Then he went to Purdue or something like that. And then he was with the 49ers, who I think Coach Parker was there when he was there. I think.
Yep.
Yeah. And then
Dwayne's a good man.
now he's in the private sector. And so what's interesting with you though is, he got out of strength and conditioning. He's got a strength and conditioning facility. You're not doing strength and conditioning. So talk to us about the transition and just other opportunities and how to really, I guess, use peripheral vision with your skills.
Yeah. So when, we did a lot of winning in Indianapolis because of Peyton Manning's and Reggie Wayne's and Marvin Harrison's and Robert Mathis's and all these other guys. And I used to spend a lot of time, talking to guys about their post-career, Jeff Saturday and Ryan Deem and other guys. And, I always felt like I had, I used to call my house the house that Peyton built because, we wouldn't be anywhere without these guys. And so when, like I said, we did a lot of winning and all that. And then Peyton doesn't play that 1 year. We go 2-14 and they throw everybody out of the building. And we had other opportunities with other teams to go and all that. But I had made a decision a few years prior to that when my time in Indianapolis was over, I was gonna move on from the pro sport world. Not because I didn't love it. I have zero, not one regret, nothing. But I made a decision. I didn't want to miss the time I was already missing with my kids.
Yep.
And even working for Coach Dungy, Jim Caldwell, you could spend you get all the time you want with your family or whatever it is. But so I didn't want to do that. I made a decision. There was other offers in pro sports and different things, and it was wonderful, and it filled the ego a little bit. But I moved on and worked on behalf of the NFL Players Association, the Players Trust Program, through Exos, helping retired players in the transition. It's a great program for those guys. And I was there for a couple of years. The program's amazing. And then moved on.
Where were you in that? Do you stay in?
I was in New Jersey, but it was the travel. That's why I only did it a couple of years because the travel for me was going to be way more than I could handle with the family
right
that I was doing. And they were great and huge supporter and proponent of that program. But a couple of years prior to that, Zach, there was an incident that occurred on a youth baseball field in Carmel, Indiana, with my young son and his youth baseball team. And without getting into too many details of the story, I hadn't been around youth sports in years. When you're in, like anything you're very focused on, you get tunnel vision. A lot of times in pro sports, we joke, we don't even know who the president is half the time. You're so dialed in,
Right.
Even as a strength coach. And so I walk on this field, second grade baseball, and in Indiana, where some of the best, nicest, greatest folks on the planet live, like just Midwest, just wonderful people. And it's madness. Kids are throwing things, umpires, people screaming. There's a woman I'll never forget on the backstop, shaking the backstop. And things had settled down. It was kind of a long walk to the field, but I see what's going on. By the time I got there, it kind of had settled down. And I sit down next to a buddy of mine. I go, what the hell's going on here? And he was puzzled by my question. And I go, what? I said, hey, man, what is going on? What's going on with these kids? Screen, there's things everywhere. He goes, oh, you're not here much. He goes, this is youth sports. This was after a little bit of back and forth. He goes, this is what it is now. And I go, what if this is good? Like, what is good about this? He kind of just leapt away to know what I was even getting at. And I sat there and I said to myself, whenever I'm done in the NFL, this is my next thing. I made a decision that day on those bleachers. My son wasn't even involved in the incident. He was involved as a teammate, but not intimately involved. And I said, if this is what youth sports is, I got to learn for myself what's going on. And if this is what it is, this can't continue. And I got to lock arms with people that believe what I believe about what a youth sports experience ought to be. Having had my own both horrific experiences and having had my own wonderful experiences. And I can speak more to the horrific for myself. So I immersed in that world once we left Indianapolis. I said, let me learn this thing. And I learned a ton, and I traversed the country, not only meeting with people and meeting some of the greatest people in youth sports.
People were you meeting?
Well, even going back to Joe Ehrman, who used to work with us. Joe wrote Inside Out Coaching. He runs the Inside Out Initiative. Joe's book, Inside Out Coaching, I say this, it ought to be non-negotiable reading for every coach, and actually ought to be non-negotiable reading for every human being. Joe's one of the
what's his name? Joe?
Inside Out, Joe Ehrman. Yeah, EHRMANN. One of the most impactful, influential, amazing guys you'll ever have the pleasure to even read, let alone, I've got to know Joe. Tony used to bring him into coaches and players. And I've learned a lot about what true coaching is from Joe. His story you can't even make up. It's ridiculous. He used to play for the Baltimore Colts back in the 70s. It's amazing, amazing stuff. So, John O'Sullivan, Changing the Game Project. I've been in Project Play, people that work with that you never heard of. Doing a thing this Friday night with For the Love of the Game, a youth sports thing. So I've met, talked with people, I've taught, and I've ran around the country learning about youth sports, what it is, what it isn't, all these organizations, the mess, the greatness, everything. And I was talking a lot. The background I have, people want to hear about pro sports and youth sports have nothing to do with each other. They don't.
Right.
So like, well, what do you think? I'm like, I don't, what do I know? So, but wound up doing a lot of that. And then I came, I got basically, Zach, I'm like, I've done enough talking. It's time to do. And John O'Sullivan at Changing the Game Project had said to me years ago, he goes, something this country needs is a great multi-sport youth program in this country, a well-run multi-sport youth program that espouses everything we're talking about, not sports specialism, playing multiple sports.
Right.
We understand what fun is. Amanda Visick at George Washington University, who's done unbelievable research and taught us what actually fun means. And it's not cupcakes and unicorns and rainbows. Competition can be fun, right? And coaching can be fun, and being with your teammates. So this polarizing word of fun, we understand what it means in youth sports. And so how do we tackle this thing where 70% of kids are quitting youth sports by the age of 13? And what I tell people is, can you imagine in your gym, you knew the calendar date where you were going to lose 70% of your business. You actually knew when it was going to happen. You said, on this date, I'm going to lose 70% of my business. And then the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result, right?
Right.
So you continue to do things the same way. So I looked at the statistic and I said, 70% of kids are quitting. What is the problem? Because I think the kids are fine. It's us adults, we're the same age, we're the problem, right? So I used to think parents were a problem and jerk. I don't. Every parent loves their child. They just don't know. I don't know mechanics, like I said. I don't know about plumbing. I don't know how to install the carpet I'm getting next week. That's why they're coming over here from Lowe's. So I could learn a lot from those guys. But if I tell those carpet guys how to install the carpet, what do I know about it? So our most precious thing, our children, and we all have this, can't even explain the emotional and visceral response we have with our own children and even other people's children. So I said, can we have a place that does this? We've learned all these things. And I came across this place because I don't know anything about business. I'm a coach. I'll bankrupt the business in a week if you let me. You know, I have no business acumen. I don't even know what a P&L report is, right? So I found this business, this company called I9 Sports, the letter I, the number 9 Sports. And I couldn't believe it when I started diving into it. And then I started researching them like crazy. Kids ages 3 to 14, multiple sports, no sports specialization. We teach character and sportsmanship. This is how we do it. And I started researching, calling people that I know, looking at it, trying to pick it apart. And I couldn't believe this thing. And then I was like, well, okay, it's a business. They've got about 170 locations across the country. And I talked to people, friends of mine whose kids did it across different places, all these things. Then I dove in. I'm like, all right, like you said before, and it's one of the first times I've done this in my life because I'm typically very, very careful and all that. And I'm like, I'm going to dive into this thing. Okay, I'll learn business or I'll hire business. Or there's plenty of, I have my accountant does all the books. Like, I know what I don't know. We got experts. Wonderful. We'll do the coaching. And so we signed on to open up the I9 Sports franchise here in Monmouth County in New Jersey. And we run multiple sports, ages 3 to 14. The curriculum is amazing. We understand what age-appropriate instruction means. So 9-year-olds aren't getting 3-year-old stuff and 3-year-olds aren't getting 11-year-old stuff, just like you wouldn't give a 5th grader a 9th grade book to read or a 5th grader a 3rd grade book to read if they didn't need that. And so we know what that is. We understand what fun means, and we understand. And what I love about this, especially now with all our overscheduled children, it's a community-based program. It's not travel league. It's not any of that. Practice and play occur on the same day.
Yep.
And so the learning that takes place there, our parents, they sign a parental pledge. We have a culture that we keep around what is, again, it's not unicorns, cupcakes, and rainbows. It is, what I talk about is honoring the sports experiences. My just cause is to honor the sports experience so that we can grow virtuous leaders who are a force for good. Sports is simply the vehicle of which we do that.
Yes.
Just like a dojo, right? And so our fields, our courts, that's the dojo of which we're going to champion sportsmanship and these other. We give a sportsmanship award every week. We teach, baked into the practices is the sportsmanship lesson of the week, integrity this week, whatever it is, right? How to teach it, how we teach it. We have certified trained coaches. It's not just the guy, with all due respect, commuting home, doesn't have time, and the kids are just going to scrimmage. That's not what it is. We have a curriculum developed by professionals that understand childhood development, child psychology, and connection and emotion and all that. And so we just started to develop this program, the I9 Sports. I'm so excited about it because we're not to say I told you so by any means. We're going to have a tangible evidence, and I9's been doing it since 2002 anyway, of what a youth sports experience looks like, where kids actually want to play after 13. We only go to 14. I want to see you play as long as, I don't care. I'm not in this for some money-making thing. It's got nothing. If I want, I wouldn't do it. It ain't what it is. And so we want to show how coaches, parents, and kids can relate through this sports experience, where sports is the vehicle that teaches what we're going to do. Not talking about it. Everybody talks about that. We're going to live it, and we do it. I'm so excited to bring it here. Having spent a bulk of my childhood in Monmouth County, now living here, that I can't wait to get the parents to go, okay, this is what it should be, right? This is what this youth sports experience should be. Kids play. We don't have tryouts and drafts and all that. Kids are learning. Why are we making a 5-year-old or the tallest 7-year-old the center? How do you know that kid's even and he's not gonna be a guard in 3? Like, you don't let a 7-year-old dribble because he's taller than everybody. Come on, right?
Youth sports has gotten that stuff you talk about, John. I say it to my coaches. The thing is, only one of them is a parent. So the ones that aren't parents, is I go, listen, make pretend you step outside of your body and you're looking in and you could hear everything that you're saying to your child, right? Pretend it's another coach. What do you want that coach talking about? And I said, I'm waiting for coaches to talk to my kids about, hey, how's school going? How's life? Are you guys sitting in the front of the class? What does your teacher think about you? Okay, effort, sportsmanship. My kids are, mainly my son, my daughter plays tennis. So there's no like rec tennis teams or any stuff like that. But, my son, I get to see how politics works for kids. And the toughest thing has been explaining to my kid that, adults will hurt you. That sucks. It just sucks to have to tell your kid that there's people out there who will hurt you, including adults. Like, you won't play because those people are not daddy's best friends, or I don't hang out with them, or, you're very good, but they want their son to pitch or play this position. And it's like, it sucks to have to explain your kid that. And you're right. The coach, I'm like, damn, I wish I played baseball and football and I could interject these things. Cause I talk about this stuff, even with the college kids, they need to hear the life stuff.
They do, from a caring adult in the community or where they're at. Like I said, the kids are fine. I've sat in the stands across this for years and years and years. It's not our time anymore. This is
Right.
their thing.
Yep.
And make sure they love it, not they love it because you love it.
Yeah.
And they love that you love it. And that's how you get your relationship and attention around this ball, puck, whatever.
Yeah.
And so I sit in the stands, I listen to these things coming out of the stands, and everybody's emotion, I get it. And some friends of mine that know my past, I always get asked, how you don't say a word in the stands? How can that be based on where you've been? I said, well, I kind of have seen this, but this is for them, not us. This is their thing. And you scream, like them looking at you when they're dribbling a ball versus the coach is not a long-term understanding of the boss that they're going to have. And to your point, here's the way it goes. And by the way, and Joe Ehrman talks about this, who played pro ball, 97%, and I'm sure you know the statistics better than I in detail, 97% of sports is a terminal experience by high school. By high school. What do you do? And by the way, so now the 3% that go on to college and less in the whatever it is, 1% that go to play pro ball. And by the way, if you're after the almighty scholarship, it ain't what you think it is necessarily.
Yeah.
And what about it? And I've seen the life cycle of the athlete from birth to, like I said, I worked in the former player program. I know what it looks like firsthand. And I can tell you, they ain't pretty. And not to paint a gloom picture by any means, but all those kids' experience will end. And eventually, the guarantee is everybody's experience will end at some point. And it's not about the damn ball or the puck. That's not your damn identity. And we used to worry about the guys in pro sports who said, boy, this is your identity. The NFL, the league, that's your identity. You're screwed. You don't even know you. You think you're NFL. You're not. And so what are those things that they can take with them? And what's the experience? The old car ride home. The kids hate the car ride home because the folks are screaming at them or telling them what to do. They've already forgotten about the damn game. You're the one doing it, screaming at referees. Like, so it's a behavioral thing. And I appreciate 100% of them love their children and want the best for their children. And I fully get, believe me. And I sit there sometimes and just, man, I like, oh, and I get where it's coming from. It's coming from a place of love, misplaced by whatever the agenda of what we call this win at all cost mentality is, or the professionalization of youth sports. Youth sports is a $17 billion industry. So now we've got all these predators and sharks that want to sell fake dreams and $5,000 tournaments to you and tell you your kid's going to be the next Derek Jeter or Serena Williams.
There's a lot of, we probably should have dug into this because I hear how hyped up you get on all of this, John. But
we got guys like you working at your place and at Middletown South who are doing the right thing. And you're in a public high school doing unbelievably great things for those kids. And I will bet you $1 to a donut they're going private somewhere and they don't even know why. And they got one of the best in the country at their school. And because an expert's a guy from out of town, we're going to go blow a bunch of money over there.
My buddy John Wellborn played in the NFL for like 9.5 seasons. And he says he calls that proximity bias. He's like, all right, this guy lives in our town or he's my neighbor. There's no way he could be an expert. Like, we got to go, and sometimes they're in a rare situation. You have a world-class expert under your roof and people, sometimes it's proximity bias. They're like, there's no way. I mean, I certainly experienced it when I opened up in Manasquan. I was like, oh, small town. I'm going to help every kid here. I'm going to have 100 kids. I'm like, we're lucky if once in a blue moon we have 5 athletes from Manasquan. It's wild, but it's interesting too, John. Like I just only heard of I9 Sports when I read that article that you shared with me. And I see kids dropping out in high school, quitting. And if we go back to these earlier parts of this podcast, like Coach Rusty, he cares about you. The older coaches talking to you, how they care about people. That's what gets the kids to start believing in themselves. And that's just missing. That is the bottom line, and look, I'm not patting my own back by any means, because it took me, I think when I became a dad, as my kids got slightly older, not when they were babies, I had a different kind of coaching style. I just began caring differently. Like I said, my early days, look, I'm not going to lie, I always spoke about winning by points on the board. Now it's like points on the scoreboard of life, because sometimes we had these really great kids training with us, great athletes. Then they were doing not so great things outside of athletics. And it was embarrassing to be associated with that. And also then I started saying, well, where did I go wrong? I just spoke to the kid about winning all the time. I didn't talk to him about controlling your behavior, representing your family. How do you behave when, on social media or when you're at school, all those things. And so, I also put that on my shoulders. And so now I think a lot about that stuff, but we need better coaches with our kids.
That stuff leads to winning anyway, without even talking about it.
Yeah, there's,
Simon Sinek, Start With Why, Leaders Eat Last, but one of his latest work, The Infinite Game, and you look at understanding finite game versus infinite game, you'll appreciate that the infinite game wins over the long term. Finite game is a terminal experience, but playing the infinite mindset. Coach Dungy, in that same meeting that I spoke about earlier, stood up and he also said this. He goes, look, I'm not a yeller. I'm not going to yell at you guys. I used to be when I was in college. I actually got thrown out of games, basketball games, when I was a kid. Coach Dungy, believe it or not. He said, I'm not going to yell at you, but I just want to ask you guys a question just so I understand. Does anybody in this room need to be yelled at or cursed at? If you do, please let me know. You can either raise your hand now or come see me later, and then we'll coach you that way if that's what you need. I would rather not what I want to do, But if you somehow need that, don't. He goes, matter of fact, raise your hand if anybody needs it. Nobody raised their hand. He goes, okay, then I'm going to go ahead and not coach you that way.
Right.
Is that okay with you guys? That I won't be yelling at you and I won't be cursing at you. Does anybody need that? No. Perfect. That's how we're gonna move forward.
I heard that's how
That's
John
Coach
Wooden
Brennan.
was. I heard John Wooden was
Like
the
John
same.
Wooden.
He said
Mark Reed was the same.
he never raised his voice. He told them that winning and losing is an internal game. So if we have more points on the scoreboard, but you didn't do your best, we didn't win.
Right
So
on.
he taught them how to do it themselves, how to win without him, essentially. You know, and there's I was looking at all right, so we've yes, Bill Walsh, the score takes care of itself.
Yeah, beautiful.
Right. It's like I sometimes just keep that book, nearby, because my buddy Alan Cosgrove always said some books you could just keep it out and you could look at the cover and it'll give you
Totally.
it tells you like what you need to be thinking about. So we should
do a
do
lot of credit, man. I love how you recognized how you were speaking.
Yeah.
And going and making the flip and not being worried about what others would think or how it looks or whatever, and going, okay, no, this is where I need to be. So good for you, man, for doing that.
Yeah, I'm still tough on the kids. I still talk about winning.
Of course.
I'm still competitive. I don't want to be the second best strength and conditioning coach or any of that. But I also know, like you said, it's going to end. Sports is going to end. This is just the vehicle for life. Now you got to be able to take those lessons. We explain that to our kids. Like, you could lose by points, but did you go out there and give it your all? And what was your behavior like? That's a big thing. What is your behavior like? And that takes time. They're humans, right? Humans and technology, the two most imperfect, inconsistent things that we expect to be perfect. So, and I'm tough on my kids too, but the thing I'm toughest about them is effort and this kind of behavior / sportsmanship.
Controllables.
My schedule doesn't allow me to do a whole lot of coaching with my kids. But I wish I had the skill of baseball and football, because I would love to be able to teach kids that effort and sportsmanship, and more than here's how you throw the ball, here's how you run, here's how you catch. Like, that's just surface. It's just surface stuff. So you're right. This is what needs to get out. So to be continued, part 2 will be a discussion on the youth sports.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it, man.
Nice. So where can people, if you have this youth program that's in Monmouth County, what about consulting? Who can reach out to you? How does that work, John?
Yeah. So as far as our I9 Sports, I'd love if people would go check us out online. The letter I, the number 9 sports.com, i9sports.com. They can sign up, become a member, put in your zip code, and you'll get all our local stuff, information, newsletters. And if you have kids and want to register them, we welcome the whole family, and we're a family-run operation, and that's how we like to do it. i9sports.com. And my best way to get a hold of me, coaching things or whatever, is simple email. I don't know if that's old school at this point. It probably is, but jtorine@gmail, jtorine@gmail.com. Send me an email. I want to talk about coaching, youth coaching, so whatever it is. Love to lock arms with people that are want to row it the same way, and learn from each other and move that direction. We got to fix this madness, and we owe it to the kids to do that.
Yeah, and I connected with you through LinkedIn.
Yeah. Actually, the one thing I'm kind of active on is LinkedIn. I had a guy that works for me yesterday explaining Facebook to me. I've never even been on it.
Yeah.
He couldn't believe he was explaining it. But anyway, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn is really solid with professionals. And you mentioned John O'Sullivan, Changing the Game Project. He's got a lot of good stuff.
No, he's got great stuff. One of the best
Yeah.
podcasts you can listen to on youth sports, in my opinion.
Yeah. So that's
Way of
really,
champions. Yeah.
yeah. I when I kind of looked up your name, I saw like a conversation you were engaged on with one of his posts. So for coaches, it's a really good place to engage with other professionals. Facebook is it's like kind of a little bit of a tornado of
Yeah, I
craziness.
don't even know. Yeah.
Yeah, good for you. Good for you. So, John, hang tight. Everybody listening, watching, thanks for watching or listening to the Strong Life podcast. And would love some feedback on this episode. And of course, if you could leave a review, that's great. I'll link up show notes, books that John has mentioned. You've got some other podcasts I've seen people have done with you. So there's YouTube videos. I'll embed them over on my website at zachevnesh.com. And this is episode 250, guys. So you'll be able to, if you want to kind of get the more details, what I do with these episodes is find older podcasts that, guests have done and other books that you've mentioned here and link them up so people can do a deep dive. So thanks to everybody for listening. John, just hang tight, my man, while I shut this down.